and welcome to The Kink Perspective. My name is Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. Before I dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to thank those of you who've supported my work through some contributions. I want to address a couple of quick questions that I've received, mainly being, if I do contribute to your show, what is it used for? Or now that I have, what are you using it on? As you know, creating any type of content takes a lot of time. In my case, it takes a lot of research and energy. So these donations allow me to focus on delivering really valuable and insightful conversations for all of us to enjoy inside of the lifestyle and BDSM community. Now, if you are enjoying my show or you find it helpful, please consider contributing. Even the smallest amount makes a difference, and you can contribute via the donation link on the Spotify description. It goes towards really keeping this content going and allows me to keep delivering it at least ad-free for now. And next part, I also wanted to welcome and give a big shout out to any of the new listeners that are tuning in today. Now, whether it's your first episode or you've been with me for a while, I'm really thrilled to have you here, and I'd like you to hear, everything that I have to deliver for you, and hopefully you're going to take some more of this content away back to your communities and have some bigger discussions. And I do ask, please, hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave a rating on your preferred platform, wherever you subscribe to podcast shows. This really helps get me the show to reach more people who might need these conversations. So, on today's show, I want to dive into a topic that a lot of us have encountered, whether we're in the vanilla or lifestyle relationships. Especially, I think this has a lot of overlap into our community. What am I talking about today? Today, and you all voted on it, I'm going to talk about emotional unavailability. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you're constantly chasing someone's emotional attention, only to kind of hit a wall? And no matter how much you give, there's this emotional distance that never seems to really close. Now, if that sounds familiar, you might be dealing with some emotional unavailability here. And this issue really does go beyond intimacy. It's about how we build meaningful connections, how we establish and build trust, and how we communicate. And emotional unavailability can impact both emotional and relational health of any relationship. Today, I'm going to really try to break down the signs, the possible reasons behind it, and what we can even do about it. So, how do we see some of these common signs of emotional unavailability? Well, first, we have to understand whether someone is emotionally unavailable, and this can be really quite challenging because it really often manifests in subtle ways. It's not always about overt rejection or about the nuances of their behavior and their communication patterns. But let's go ahead and explore some of the most common signs that, might indicate some emotional unavailability. Now, just because you hear a few, you don't need to panic. Sometimes we have a partner, they come home, they don't feel like talking, they are avoiding some intimacy that day, or they don't want to talk about how they feel. That's fine. People do have bad days, weeks, or even months. So just because you're hearing these things, if you are running into maybe, I think today I'm going to go over about 8 of these alone on this part. If you run into a few, that doesn't necessarily mean somebody's emotionally unavailable, but, if you're starting to hit like 7 or all 8 of them, you might have to make some considerations here. So first, when I talked about somebody avoiding intimacy, now, they may be comfortable with the whole physical closeness part, so the sex part, but they're going to shy away from any sort of deeper emotional bonding, right? In the lifestyle, for us, this could mean engaging in scenes without really following up with aftercare or meaningful emotional connection afterwards. But I do want to add a caveat in there because I've discussed aftercare before, and I just put that in there, and a lot of people are going to go, oh yeah, I know these types of people. But you got to remember, we have to negotiate aftercare in, and there are a lot of people. I put out a podcast last year or earlier this year about challenging the differences and the norms of aftercare, because aftercare is not for everybody. But if somebody's, if you've maybe negotiated it and all of a sudden they're dismissing you and dismissing the aftercare process, that's a potential warning sign right there. It's not necessarily a flag, it's just a possible warning sign. But what about this one? What about this difficulty for somebody expressing their feelings? Maybe they struggle to articulate their emotions, whether it's affection, fear, or maybe vulnerability. And instead of sharing their inner experiences with you, they might withdraw or avoid the conversation altogether. And that kind of makes things awkward because when you want to talk, they don't want to talk. And they're going to talk to you about the dog or running or surface level conversations that are going to have nothing to do with anything beyond that superficial level. And what about commitment issues? So, people with commitment issues are the types of individuals that steer clear of any type of label. They don't really have any long term plans, and they don't even want to discuss the future of the relationship. This avoidance here can leave somebody in a state of perpetual uncertainty. Especially if you've been with somebody for a while and you're kind of hoping they'd become your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you want this relationship to maybe manifest to the next level and you're just not getting any answers. This could be a little bit problematic. Now, commitment issues by themselves on a singular level doesn't necessarily mean that they're unavailable. They just may have commitment issues. Now, why? That could be a matter of trust. That's something a little bit different. Yes, that could put them in the realm of emotionally unavailable, but there's going to, they need a few more requirements. And working with somebody at their pace, as long as they're moving forward, not laterally, is a good sign. Sometimes, though, you do need to go lateral to go forward. And that's a different discussion for another day. Now, what about inconsistent communication? Your boyfriend's behavior might oscillate between being very engaged and suddenly he gets cold. And this type of inconsistency here creates a real roller coaster effect, and you kind of feel left guessing about what their true feelings are towards you or what their intentions are. Or, here's another point: their reluctance to discuss their feelings. And it's not about difficulties, like I mentioned before, the total reluctance here. Your girlfriend, you want to have a conversation about emotions, and that's really uncomfortable for her, and it leads her to avoid the conversation completely, or she shuts down the discussion. And this reluctance here can make it really hard to address important issues and build some sort of deeper connection. What about, they don't want to compromising on time. It's a real thing. They're going to prioritize their own schedule, their activities, but they're not going to leave a whole lot of room for the relationship needs unless it meets their needs and they coincide. And this rigid time management can feel like their personal interests always come first. Well, then how are you a priority in the relationship? What about a lack of empathy? Maybe he finds it difficult to empathize, or she finds it difficult to empathize with your partner's emotions. And when emotions are expressed and they're just not, they don't care or they tune out, that can be a little bit problematic. It doesn't make them a sociopath. Let's just get that off the table right now. But if they don't really react, or they are reacting with impatience or a lack of understanding, there might be a lack of empathy there. And finally, is you've got defensiveness. And when their emotional distance is addressed, they become overly defensive. And instead of acknowledging their behavior, they might be quick to blame you or even dismiss your concerns and not really care and just become angry. It's important to understand these signs so you can help you better understand the dynamics at play. And that allows you to decide how to address them in your relationship and how you're going to move forward. That's all of these things we have to learn when we're going inside of relationships. Relationships are complicated. They're not easy, and they require a lot of work. And this is one word you'll hear me constantly say: work, effort. Because it takes a conscious effort to want to get up every day and be engaged with somebody that you're dating, not just on the level that suits you. If that's your whole game plan, you're going to end up alone very quickly. Because most people aren't going to take that. At some given point, they're just going to say, I've had enough, and they're going to move on. Your relationship cycle is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then eventually you're going to date people for like 4 seconds, and they're going to wake up to you, and they're going to go away, and you're going to find yourself that you're all alone. I'm going to get to addressing these things later and how we might, start working on that. But let me flip the script here for a second. What if I'm the emotionally unavailable one? Now, I've discussed how we can kind of identify some emotional unavailability in someone else, but it's really important to reflect on whether I might be the person that's exhibiting these traits. Emotional unavailability isn't always obvious, and sometimes we might not realize that we're contributing to the dynamic in a, not so healthy way. So let's go through some questions that might help you assess whether or not you're the one who's emotionally unavailable. First, do you avoid any type of emotional conversation? If you find yourself maybe steering clear of these discussions about your feelings or the relationships, it might be a sign that you're struggling with intimacy on an emotional level. Do you distance yourself when someone gets too close to you? Do you feel the need to pull away or create space when someone tries to get emotionally close? And if that's true, this can maybe indicate a fear of being vulnerable or a fear of commitment with somebody. And finally, do you keep things surface level to avoid some sort of vulnerability? If you tend to stick to light topics to avoid anything deeper, more meaningful types of conversations, you might be protecting yourself from the discomfort of your emotional exposure. The question is going to come down to is the why. Why are you experiencing this? Why is this happening to you? Well, there are ways to work on it. You need to typically get to the root cause. Sometimes it's very obvious and we can kind of snap out of the pattern, and other times it requires a lot of work on your behalf. But if you reflect on these questions, and it might help you uncover whether or not they're contributing to the pattern of your emotional unavailability. And this behavior really can manifest in a lot of different ways, such as prioritizing your personal freedom over relationships, withdrawing during conflicts instead of, addressing them, or focusing excessively on your personal goals while neglecting your relationship dynamics or even the goals of somebody else. Remember, we're supposed to be there for our partner and cheer them on and want them to be the best version of themselves. I've had a lot of, I spent a lot of time in school over my life, and I've had the partners I've dated have been there for me when I've graduated and I've gotten my master's degrees or the military or whatever, any type of major accomplishment in my life, and it felt so validating and good. I've never had one person. I've actually only had one person in my life was like, nah, I don't know, I'm gonna go get my hair done, and I think I was like, very early years, teen years, 18, 19, and that relationship didn't work out because she prioritized. I remember her prioritizing herself over me, over our relationship, and it's fine. I knew back then it was never going to work, but I remember. I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember there was something, and I was really happy, and she couldn't care less. And that was at the point I started to ask myself, do I want to be with someone like that? And then suddenly I came to the conclusion, no. Now, how do we address emotional unavailability? Addressing this really does involve a combination of self awareness and some sort of practical strategies because you can't do things without a plan. If you want to make a budget, you got to make a plan, right? If you want to buy a house, you got to have a plan. Or you want to travel, you got to have a plan. But you got to start by developing self awareness. You have to recognize and understand the emotional patterns and how they impact your relationships. You need to know your attachment style, and that really does provide valuable insights into your behaviors and help you navigate challenges more effectively. You have to focus on open communication. It's important to set aside intentional time for discussing emotions with your partner. And you need to approach these conversations with a real genuine interest in understanding and connection rather than applying pressure or forcing the discussion. You got to respect boundaries, and that's really crucial here because everybody needs space for emotional growth. So you got to be mindful of your partner's limits while working on your own. And it's really about finding that balance between giving and maintaining connection. You might need to consider therapy. And if you find challenging, if you find this to be very difficult, especially when you're trying to improve your emotional expressions, you might need some help. And that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but you might need a different way to understand your behavior, how to change your behavior, and move it forward. And this really does come with, talking with someone who's got the tools and guidance that can help you better understand and regulate your emotional management and your deeper emotional connections. And finally, you got to remember patience. This really is the key to all of this. Developing emotional availability is a gradual process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It requires time and consistent effort. Effort. Again, with that word, Chris, why do you say it so much? Because I believe in it. I think this world lacks it. Not by everybody and not by all of us all the time, but I think a lot of times we forget about effort. Every week I do my show, I put in a lot of effort, right? I'm here for you all. Takes effort. I'm here for my clients. Takes effort. I speak with my clients sometimes an hour and 20 minutes. I don't charge them anything extra because I'm there for them, because I'm putting in the effort and they're putting in the work and we're there. We're doing it. Effort. So be patient with yourself. Be patient with your partner as you work through some of this stuff, especially inside of lifestyle dynamics. You got to balance your autonomy and your connection. You have to maintain your independence while you nurture your emotional closeness. Because you remember, first off, everything we do in the rest for the rest of the world, they all consider it. I mean, for the most part, everything we do, because you can't consent to abuse, it's criminal. So what we're doing is we're gaining a deeper trust with somebody to do these activities we really enjoy, and we trust that they're not going to hurt us, and they have our best intentions at heart, and they have ours. And this is how we create and foster a healthier, more fulfilling relationship dynamic. This is how we go from that first meeting with the little butterflies in our stomach to a couple of years later, my personal experience and the way it probably should be, but you all think I'm probably gatekeeping, to getting your first caller. First caller, not your only caller. First in a long line, but different subject for another day. I'm old school. I'm cynical. Sorry if you don't like that. I don't believe she could call her in 2 weeks, but that's all I'm saying about that. And I know I'll probably get a question on that, but that's just a different story. Finally, I want to address personal growth here and how we cultivate this whole availability thing. Enhancing your whole emotional availability, and it's a really continuous journey. And it involves several key aspects of personal growth beyond what I've already discussed. And here I want to kind of give you a few more ways. First, like I mentioned, I did kind of touch base on it before, but you got to learn to develop empathy. You have to practice not just listening here, but truly understanding and validating your partner's emotions. Instead of offering solutions, focus on being present and acknowledging their feelings. And this helps create a supportive environment where both of you feel heard and valued and understood and listened to. Second, you got to cultivate vulnerability. You got to take small, intentional steps towards sharing your fears and your desires. I know it's scary because I think a lot of people think they're going to have these things thrown back in their face or used against them, but you're never going to get close. I understand if that's your past experience, but then you learn to start small. Small steps are the key to building bridges, right? Start with something maybe a less sensitive topic and gradually work up to deeper issues. Doing this gradual approach helps build trust for you and them, and it encourages your partner to be more open as well. Mindfulness is something else. Be mindful of your emotional presence within the relationship. Be aware of how you respond to emotional needs and how present you are during your interactions with your partner. Sometimes it's really important to self-regulate here and self-reflect. And this can help you adjust and improve your emotional engagement, not only with your partner, but yourself. Because sometimes we turn it inwards and beat up on ourselves. So don't do that. I'm giving you a pass. Don't do that. Beating up on yourself creates a negative pattern, and that pattern can carry outwards. If you're beating up on yourself emotionally, you're going to beat up on your partner emotionally. Here's a big one I'm going to chuck at you, and something I talk to a lot of my clients about. Take responsibility. Understand the impact of your behavior on the relationship. Acknowledge that your actions, your attitudes might affect your partner's feelings and the overall dynamic. And this level of accountability is really crucial here for this personal growth stuff. And it helps you foster a really secure, safe, and healthy relationship. But we don't do this enough. I want to blame my cat, or my dog ate my homework, or my dog ate my feelings, or my mom called me and I'm pissed off at the world. And no, own your shit. Honestly, just own it. Own it and tell them, I'm sorry, I screwed up. I admit I screwed up. I'm sorry. I want to try to fix this. Let's move forward. Or I should have listened. Let's move forward. Be sincere. Be direct. Because once your partner learns to understand when you're being sincere about your apologies and taking responsibility, they're going to trust you more. And with that, you need to practice some self-compassion. You have to be kind to yourself and work on becoming more emotionally available. You have to recognize that this takes time, and setbacks are going to be part of the process here. You got to treat yourself with the same patience and understanding that you're extending to your partner. And that's really hard for a lot of people to do. You do have to learn to build some emotional resilience. This is the 6th one for some of you that are writing this down. This is number 6. Strengthen your ability to handle emotional challenges by developing some really good coping strategies. Maybe learn some stress management techniques or engage in some sort of self-care practices. Maybe get support from your friends or your family. You can come talk to me if you need to. You can schedule an appointment with me. Or you can just send me, hey, I'm having a bad day. You got a minute? And if I'm online, I will absolutely listen. And finally, you got to set a realistic goal. You got to make sure that you establish something that's achievable for improving your emotional availability. You got to break down your goals into manageable steps and celebrate the progress along the way. Which reminds me, like I have a client I'm working with. Wonderful person. She brings a lot of laughter and joy. She's put a lot of work into her therapeutic journey along the way. And very recently, the most recent time, trying not to be too specific, she had a really good weekend. And it was very validating for her. And I told her, I said, it's time to celebrate. You get the whole week off. Don't worry about anything we've got to keep covering or we're going to continue doing. Go celebrate. Go to your parties. You got a dungeon thing coming up. Go enjoy that. Go, celebrate this small victory and enjoy it. Make it part of your journey. And we don't do that often enough. If any of you have ever seen Parks and Recreation, there used to be this thing called Treat Yourself. I know I'm not saying it right, but I can't remember it exactly. But do treat yourself. It's important because that's what we have to remind ourselves what we're working for. If you can integrate some of these practices, just a few, into your life, you're not only going to enhance your emotional availability, but you're going to contribute to feeling more resilient inside of relationships, stronger, more equitable partner for yourself and for them. I want to end with this. Emotional availability is not just an overnight transformation. It's a journey. And whether you're finding that you're emotionally unavailable right now or you're navigating a relationship with someone who is, progress requires a deep level of self-awareness, empathy, and a whole lot of patience. It's about understanding your own emotional patterns and engaging in meaningful conversations that, and making really consistent effort along the way to connect on a deeper level with someone. And most of all, connecting on a deeper level with yourself. You got to remember, emotional availability begins with recognizing where you stand and are working towards and where you want to be. It's a continual process of growth and adjustment, and every step you take contributes to building a more meaningful and fulfilling relationship now and in the future. I want to cover this really quick too as well. I know you hear me mention it on occasion. I do have a book out there, Tangled Desires, the intersection between BDSM and psychology. Wherever you get your download books, you can get it. Drop the price on that. And there is the print version as well. If you are a hard copy reader like myself, prefer to have things and we're thumbing through things. It's really a lot easier for some of us. I'd like to know if you've ever been involved with somebody who's been emotionally unavailable. I know, once or twice in a life, that's definitely been a pattern for me. I could definitely think of a few people that I've dated in my time that were emotionally unavailable, somehow win the award for it. So yeah, give me some feedback on this. I want to hear, a lot of you voted for this topic. Did I cover enough for you? Did this explain a lot more? Did this help you identify you are emotionally unavailable? Let me know in the comments section below. Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.